There's a dog sitting in a shelter right now. It has been there for 2 years. Every morning it walks to the same corner of its kennel and waits. Not for food, not for play. It is waiting for one specific person, a person who is never coming back. That is not a story about loyalty. That is a story about something far stranger happening inside an animal's brain. Because the bond some animals form with a single human is not simply affection. It is not habit. Scientists now believe it activates the same neurological machinery as grief, attachment, and long-term memory. The same circuits that make you miss someone. The same ones that keep a face locked in your mind for decades. And what triggers it changes everything you thought you knew about the line between humans and animals. Your brain has a structure called the anterior cingulate cortex. It processes social pain, the ache of separation, the hollow feeling when someone who matters is suddenly gone. For most of human history, scientists assumed this was uniquely human. Then researchers started scanning animal brains, and they found the same structure: active, firing, processing the exact same signal. Dr. Gregory Berns at Emory University trained dogs to lie still inside MRI machines while they were awake. What he found stunned the neuroscience community. The caudate nucleus, the region of the brain most associated with anticipation of reward and love, lit up most strongly not in response to food. It lit up most strongly in response to the smell of a specific human. Not any human. One human. The dog's brain was not simply registering a familiar scent. It was doing something closer to what your brain does when you hear the voice of someone you love. But dogs are domesticated. You might expect this. You might say thousands of years of evolution shaped them specifically for human bonding. So, consider the crow. Crows are wild. They have not been bred for companionship. They do not need humans to survive. And yet researchers at the University of Washington, led by Dr. John Marsloff, discovered that crows can remember individual human faces for years. They pass that information to other crows. They teach their children which faces are safe and which are threats. But here's the part that matters. Some crows go further. They begin to follow specific humans. They leave objects, buttons, pieces of glass, small shiny things placed deliberately where that human will find them. And when the human stops appearing, the crow waits, returns to the same spot. Day after day. This is not random behavior. This is directed attachment. Something in the crow's brain has marked one individual as significant, different, worth tracking across time. Why does this happen? The answer starts with something called the imprinting window. Most animals, in the first days or weeks of life, are neurologically primed to form a permanent bond with whatever safe, stable presence is nearby. Usually that is their mother. But in the right circumstances, it can be a human. Konrad Lorenz, the Nobel Prize-winning ethologist, demonstrated this famously with geese. He let a group of goslings hatch and positioned himself as the first moving object they saw. The geese bonded to him instantly and permanently. They followed him everywhere. They chose him over their own species. Not because he was better, because their brains had marked him during a narrow window when attachment circuits were wide open and the identity of the attachment target was written in permanently. But imprinting is not the whole story, because some of the strongest human-animal bonds form in adulthood, outside any developmental window, with animals whose biology should not allow it. Take the case of Christian the lion. In 1969, two young men in London bought a lion cub from Harrods department store. They raised him in their apartment, played with him, slept near him. A year later, Christian had grown too large to keep and was released into the wild in Kenya under the care of conservationist George Adamson. 1 year after that, the two men returned to find him. Everyone warned them it was impossible. A lion raised in the wild, living with a pride, leading a new life, had no reason to remember two humans he had not seen in over a year. Lions do not work this way. Their brains do not hold on to individual human identity. And yet Christian ran to them. He reared up. He placed his paws on their shoulders. He pushed his face into theirs. What was happening in that lion's brain is still not fully understood, but the footage is real, and it forces a question that neuroscience has not yet fully answered. Is this memory? Is this love? Is it something for which we do not yet have a word? Your own capacity for long-term social bonding depends on a hormone called oxytocin. You release it when you touch someone you trust, when you hear a familiar voice, when you make eye contact with someone who matters to you. For decades, scientists assumed oxytocin was a uniquely mammalian social hormone. Then they found it in birds, in fish, in certain reptiles. Structurally similar molecules driving similar attachment behaviors across hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary distance. The molecule that makes you feel close to another person is ancient. It predates you by an almost incomprehensible stretch of time. And in some animals, it appears to activate in relation to a specific human the same way it activates in you when you think about someone you love. Dr. Miho Nagasawa at Azabu University in Japan studied what happens when dogs and their owners make eye contact. She measured oxytocin levels in both the human and the dog before and after the gaze. Both levels rose. The longer the mutual gaze, the higher the rise. The same feedback loop that deepens bonds between human parents and infants was operating between a dog and a person. A loop that, she noted, wolves did not engage in with humans. This behavior had evolved specifically in dogs after thousands of years of coexistence with humans. But why do some animals choose one human and not another? This is where the science becomes genuinely strange. Research suggests it is not always the human who feeds them, not always the human who is kindest, not always the loudest or the most attentive. Animals that form single human bonds often choose based on criteria that map more closely to personality resonance than utility. They choose calm over chaotic, consistent over unpredictable. They choose the human who matches their own internal rhythm. There are rescue dogs that have sat in shelters for years, indifferent to dozens of potential adopters, and then locked eyes with one specific person and refused to look away. There are horses that allow only one person to approach without flinching. There are birds that will not sing for anyone else. Something in the animal is running a kind of assessment, reading thousands of microsignals, posture, breath rate, the steadiness of a hand, the tone of a voice before any words are spoken. And when the signal matches something the animal's nervous system recognizes as safe, as right, the attachment circuit opens. Once it opens, it does not easily close. This is the part that makes Christian the lion's reunion make more sense. This is why the shelter dog waits in the corner. This is why the crow returns to the same spot after the human has gone. The bond is not stored as a simple preference. In animals capable of forming it, it is stored the way you store the face of someone you love, not as information, as something more like gravity, something that pulls behavior without conscious effort, something that persists beyond logic, beyond time, beyond any reasonable expectation that the other will return. And here's the part that should sit with you. The attachment some animals form to one human is neurologically indistinguishable in its structure from the attachment you form to the people who matter most to you. The same hormones, the same brain regions, the same behavioral patterns, the same weighting. You have always felt that the people closest to you chose you somehow, that out of everyone they could have attached to, something about you specifically was the answer. Some animals feel this too, and they are not wrong. Tonight, somewhere, an animal is waiting in the same spot it has always waited. Not because it does not understand that the person is gone, but because in its nervous system, that person is still the most significant signal it has ever received. And that is not so different from the faces you keep returning to, the ones you cannot let go of, the ones that changed what your brain considers home. The animal waiting in the corner already knows something you have spent your whole life learning. Some things once chosen do not stop being chosen just because time passes.
Go ahead and hit that subscribe button.